Hey everybody, thanks for joining me for another Unity tutorial. In this video I'm going to be creating a coin system. So yeah, to start off I am going to first create a 2D sprite. I'm going to rename this to coin. I'm going to set the sprite to being the coin sprite, and if you don't have this you can create your own and then drag that into your project, or you can find one online. I'm going to make the scale of it be something like 3 by 3. And I'm going to move it down to here, about there. And then I'm going to create my UI. And this is what's going to show our actual score. So I'm going to create a UI canvas. This I'm going to rename to Game UI Elements. Then under this I'm going to create a UI panel. This I'm going to rename to Coin System. And I'm going to then make it be transparent. And then under this coin system, I'm going to create a UI image. I'm going to rename this image to coin image. And I'm going to make the sprite be the money coin. Then I'm going to make the scale of it be 50 by 50. And then I'm going to drag it up to the top right. Now you can drag it wherever you want your coin to be, but I think just the top right works fine. So then I am also going to then create a UI, and now this I need to create the text. Now you can either create a normal text, or you can create the text with TextMeshPro. When you create TextMeshPro, it'll show like a little TextMeshPro thing up here, or like a window, and then you have to import the TextMeshPro. But otherwise, if you're just using normal text, I'm going to tell you what to also do. I just disabled these because though I just had those enabled before, but I'm going to go over those in a minute. Otherwise, let's get started. So I'm going to move the text like this, and I'm going to make it just a little bit smaller. I'm going to make it to where it'll say like 0 or something. I'm going to make it centered, but I'm going to make it anchored to the left. And I'm going to make the font size be 50. Now, this is where if you are just using normal text, you can move on to the next part of the video. Or if you are using this, then you can watch. Otherwise, I'm going to be using these nice functions built into the TextMeshPro, where if you can actually add an outline, you can change the thickness of it. So you can have it really thick or not thick at all. I'm making it like that, and then you can also change the color of the thickness, and it kind of adds that outline to it. Now I'm also going to be adding an underlay where you can actually add offset settings to kind of have it offset a little bit. It just gives it that more nice kind of effect to it. And you can mess around with that if you want to. But now I'm going to rename this to coin text. And then I'm going to create an empty. This is what's going to be a score manager. And then I'm going to add a component called the score manager. Now within the score manager, I'm going to remove the start method. And I'm going to be adding 2 variables. Because what I'm going to be doing is, I basically want the text to go up by 1 each time you enter the trigger zone of the coin. But if you try to make a score, or not a score, but a text element plus equal 1, text is like a string. So when you make a string plus equal to 1, it will make it go from like a 0 to a 0, 1 to a 0, 1, 1. It'll actually like add on a 1 to it. But when you use an integer, you can make an integer go, if you plus equal an integer, it'll go up from 0 to 1 to 2 to 3. So what we're going to be doing is making a integer go up by 1, and then we're going to be having the score text equal the integer. So I'm going to be creating a variable for the integer. I'm going to make this public of type int. I'm going to be calling this current score. Then I'm going to create another variable that's going to be public, and it's going to be the TextMeshPro. Now if you're using normal text, you want to be using UnityEngine.UI, and then down here you want to do public text, and then name it whatever you want to. But when you're using TextMeshPro, you need to do using TextMeshPro. Then down here you could do public TextMeshPro, and this is the one on the bottom here. And then I'm just going to name this something like ScoreText. Then in the void update, I'm going to have it to where the ScoreText, which is that the TextMeshPro in the GameUI elements, that's going to be this text. And then I'm going to want to reference the actual text which inside of this, which is this. And if we modify that, that's what text that'll show up there. So we want it to be this text. So I'm going to do dot text. I'm going to set that equal to the current score, which is the integer that I want to modify. But it's going to give you an error because you're trying to make a string equal an integer. So we're going to have to convert this integer to a string. So I'm going to do dot to string. So now we're making a string technically equal a string, so that'll work. So after we add the void update, I then want to add my own method. I'm going to make this public void, call it something like AddPoint, and then I'm going to do open close parentheses, and then this. So then this is what I want to do when I call the AddPoint function. And what I want is I want the current score to then plus equal, so go up by however much points. So I can make it go up by 1, go up by 2, whatever. So if let's say go up by 3, whenever I call this AddPoint function, like let's say in the update, I want to add point, then it'll add 1 point to my current score. But what I'm going to instead do is make it to where I can actually modify how much points. So I then want to then add in a integer called AmountOfPoints. And then up here I then want to make this to where it's going to plus equal the amount of points. So now if I call the AddPoint function, I can then add in a 1, and now it's going to add 1 point, or I can add a 2, and it's going to add in 2 points. So that's good for this script. So this script is technically done. So if I save that, then go out, I'm going to want to go to the score manager, and then set it up to where the score text is going to be the coin text that I created, and then the current score will be modified with whatever score I have, so I'm just going to leave that be. Now I'm going to go to that coin we created down here, and I'm going to add a component called coin. But before I do that, I actually want to add a box collider 2D, and this is what's going to register collision. So I'm going to actually want to check in the is trigger, because I want this to sense when I enter the trigger zone of it. And then I want to then add a coin script. Now within this script, I want to remove these, the void update and the void start methods. I want to make a void on trigger enter 2D, and make sure that it says collider 2D at the end of this, and then you can name this whatever you want to. In this case, it's just automatically collision for me, but you can name that whatever. Now this is when anything enters the trigger zone of the coin, but I want a sense to see what specifically enters the trigger zone, and I want it to be the player. So I'm going to do if collision, or whatever you named it. That's just the name that it gives here, but you can name that whatever you want to. .gameObject.CompareTag, and I want that to be the player tag. And if you do that, then you have to make sure if you go out and go to the player that he is tagged with the player tag, and it should be automatically built into Unity, and you just have to go to that tag. But if for some reason it isn't, or you want to add a different tag, you can go to add tag, then you can name this whatever you want to, and then you can just use that tag. But in this case, I'm just going to use the player tag. So then, this senses to see when the player enters the trigger zone of the coin, and I want to do this. So now I want to then reference the score manager, and I want it to then call the AddPoint method. Now I could do this up here and create a public variable called scoreManager, call something scoreManager, and then go into the score manager and then call the AddPoint function from there. But that'll just add a reference and it'll just be not as organized. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to do FindObjectOfType, and that's going to be the score manager, and then I'm going to call the .AddPoint function. And then this is how many much points I want to add. Let's say I want to add 1 point, I just do that. And this would work, but I want to organize it a little bit more. So I'm going to actually create a score manager variable, call it something like score manager. And I'm going to set that equal to the FindObjectOfType score manager. So now down here, I can then call the score manager with the lowercase s .AddPoint. And this is how much points I want to add. Now I actually want to make my own variable for how much points. So I'm going to create a public int for the amount of coins. And then down here I want to add the point of the amount of coins. So now that'll look. Every time I enter the trigger zone of the coin, it's going to add the amount of coins. But I also want it to then destroy the game object. So then it gets rid of the coin. So then I want to call the destroy. And then I want to do game object. So now if I save the script, then go out. Under this coin, it'll show the amount of coins. If I do 2 coins, then when I enter the trigger zone, it's going to give me 2 coins. If I do 1, it's going to give me 1. And then when I take this coin, I want to duplicate it a couple times. And then I just kind of want to separate them to kind of divide it out a little bit. Kind of divide it like that. Then I'm going to click play. So now, also, I forgot to do something. If I go to the game UI elements, the coin image and the coin text need to be anchored to the top right. So now, if I click play, and then go up to the coins, it should give me 1.2 coins, and then, if I could touch this one, there we go, 3 coins, 4, and then 5. So it'll give me a coin each time I enter the trigger zone of the coins. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and join me next time where I'm going to go over another function in Unity.